Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another video of ChemSolve. Today we are gonna solve Cambridge IGCSE Chemistry Paper 2. That is a multiple choice question paper. The code for this paper is 0620/22 October-November 2025. In this paper we will solve part 1 of this question paper, that is from question number 1 till question number 20. So let's start the paper. Okay, question number 1. What happens to the volume of the fixed mass of the gas when the temperature is increased or the pressure is decreased? So let's understand what is the relationship of volume with the temperature as well as with the pressure. My dear student, volume and pressure, they are inversely proportional to each other. It's mean when volume is increased, then pressure decreases. And the relationship between volume and temperature is directly proportional. It's mean if we increase the temperature, then volume would increase as well. So when the temperature is increased, then volume should also increase. So we should choose the option that says volume increases. That's why these two options which says that volume decreases, they are the wrong ones. So we have to choose either C or D. Now let's see the other column. When the pressure is decreased, we just have discussed when the pressure is decreased, then the volume must increase. Why? Because they are inversely proportional to each other. So in this case, when we are decreasing the pressure, then we should increase the volume. But option C says volume decreases. So this is the wrong one. Volume is increased. So the correct option is option D. Next question. The diagram shows heating curve of a substance. Between which 2 points do the particles of the substance changes from being fixed position to being mobile? Okay. So fixed position means it is solid. And mobile means it can now move. So we can say it is liquid. This is a heating curve. So what happens? When a solid substance is heated, then it changes into solid into liquid. So at Q and R, it is both solid and liquid. But here it is liquid. The whole SR is liquid. The whole QR is solid plus liquid. And the whole PQ is solid. While here S and T, it is liquid, changes into gas, and T and U, it is gas. So Q and R is the portion where a solid has started changes into a liquid. That's why if I want to move from a solid state to a liquid state, then QR portion is the best option. That's why it would be the correct option. So the correct option for this question is option B. Let's move to question number 3. A student investigates the diffusion of ammonia gas NH3 and hydrogen chloride gas, that is HCl. Two apparatuses are set up as shown at the room temperature and pressure. So we are provided with the source of ammonia gas and a damp red litmus paper has been placed here. Then there is a source of hydrogen chloride gas and a damp blue litmus paper has been placed here. The damp red litmus paper in apparatus 1 changes color after 30 seconds, while he is asking that how long it takes for the damp blue litmus paper in apparatus 2 to change the color. Okay, so for that, clearly it is the diffusion question. Diffusion depend upon two things. Number 1, rate of diffusion is directly proportional to temperature. Higher the temperature, higher the rate of diffusion. And rate of diffusion is inversely proportional to the molar mass. Higher the molar mass, lower will be the rate of diffusion. So let's calculate the molar masses of ammonia. Nitrogen has molar mass 14, Hydrogen has molar mass 1 and there are 3 hydrogens, then it would be plus 3. The total molar mass for ammonia would be 17. While for HCl, hydrogen has a molar mass 1 and chlorine has 35.5, so it will make 36.5. So I will write 36.5 here. You know, ammonia is an alkaline gas, so it will turn the damn red litmus paper blue. While HCl is an acidic gas, so it will turn blue litmus paper into red. While okay, so the damn red litmus paper in the apparatus 1 changes color after 30 minutes. So ammonia is lighter gas. That's why its rate of diffusion would be faster. It will diffuse faster. Why? Because its molar mass is smaller, lighter. While HCl, its molar mass is more than ammonia, almost double, 36.5. So it will diffuse slowly. Na3 is lighter, so diffuses faster, takes less time. While HCl is heavier, so diffuses slowly, takes more time. So if lighter gas is taking 31 seconds, it's mean 21 seconds is not our option. We have to choose something that is more than 30 seconds. Again, 30 seconds is not an option. So I think 64 is the best option here, because in option D, it says that it will not change color. While it will change its color. Why? Because HCl is an alkaline, it's an acidic gas, and it will change the color from blue to red. That's why I believe option C is the correct one. Okay, now coming to our question number 4, which will describe the element, compound and mixture. Okay, so before looking at the option, let's look our own understanding what are element, compound and mixture. So element has all atoms of same type in it. And what is a compound? More than 2 atoms combined chemically. And they have the fixed ratio as well, right? The mixture has more than 2 substances which are physically combined, not chemically combined, they are physically combined, and they can be separated as well by physical means. So look at the options now. Option A says element is all type of atom in the same type. Yes, it seems correct. B seems also correct. C says can be separated into new substances. Not at all. Element is one type of atom present in it. So this is wrong. Okay, so now we have to compete between option A and B. While option A says for the compound contain different atom chemically joined, and option B says can be separated into new substances using chemical processes. So I believe that B is wrong here. They are made up of the different atoms that are chemically combined, and they can be a mixture can be separated by using the physical processes. So it's a kind of factual question. The option for that question number 4 is A. Okay. Now question number 5, which statement about atoms or ions are correct? Okay. So we have to look at the atom, and also we have to look about the ions. So the mass number of an atom in the total number of the nucleon and the proton number, not at all. The mass number of an atom is the total number of neutron, not nucleon and protons. So this is wrong. The electronic configuration of aluminium Al positive 3 is 283. Aluminium has 13 electrons, so it is 283. And when it forms Al positive 3, it means it has lost 3 electrons. And when it lost the 3 electrons, then these 3 electrons will be lost here, and it would have only 2 and 8 electronic configuration. Hydrogen is the only atom that has incomplete first electronic shell. Yes, because after hydrogen, hydrogen has 1 electron. It's been half electronic shell. While helium, it has 2. So it is complete. Okay. And then after that, it's lithium, that is 3. Okay. So its first shell would have 2 electron and then 1. So according to this, hydrogen is the only one that has the first incomplete electronic shell. So this option seems to be the correct one. These are the wrong ones, and option C is the correct one here. Okay, now look at question number 6. So which two values are used to calculate the relative atomic mass of the sample of the boron? Okay, so what is the formula for that when we have to calculate the fractional atomic mass? So formula for that is, we basically take mass of first isotope multiply by its percentage abundance plus mass of second isotope multiply by its percentage abundance, and so on if we have the third isotope as well, and all divided by 100. So we need mass of the isotope and we need the percentage abundances of the isotope. So total number of the boron isotope, not at all. We don't know the total number of, we don't need the total number of the isotope. So option A and D are not the correct one. The relative abundance of the each isotope, yes, it makes sense. The relative abundance of the each isotope, yes, it makes sense. Now we don't have to choose between A and D. So I will just complete B and C. The relative mass of the boron isotope, yes. And the total number of the boron atom, not at all. So I think B is the correct option here. Question number 7. Which statement describes the structure of the sodium chloride? Okay, sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is basically an ionic compound. It is an ionic compound. And ionic compound are formed when a positively charged ion is electrostatically attracted towards a negatively charged ion. So we have Na positive and we have Cl negative, and they are arranged at regular interval in a crystal lattice. For example, if I show sodium with the green color and I show chlorine with the pink color, so if a green color is here, then a pink, the chloride would be here, and there would be also a chloride, and there would be a sodium, and there would be a chloride, and there would be a sodium. So basically it's a lattice in which the positive and negative ions are alternate with each other. So from this discussion, it's not a mixture. Sodium and chloride atom, not at all, ions instead. And positive ions surrounded by the sea of delocalized electron, This is for the metals, not for the ionic compounds. So I believe A is the correct option, which says it's the lattice of the alternate positive and the negative ions. Okay, question number 8. Graphite and diamond are both the forms of the element carbon, which row shows the number of the other carbon atom that each carbon atom is covalently bonded to the graphite and the diamond. Okay, let's see the chemistry behind this question. So basically, graphite is hexagonal layer structure in which there are, carbon is in group 4. So it will make the 4 covalent bond. But in graphite, 3 covalent bond are the stronger one, while 1 bond is the weaker attraction between the layers. So each carbon atom is combined with the 3 carbon atom through the strong covalent bond. Okay, while the fourth one, it is weakly attracted to the other carbon atom in the other layer. This is for the graphite. And it is something like this. These hexagonal layers like this. There's like this, okay? While for diamond, what happens? Each carbon atom is tetrahedrally arranged to the other 4 carbon atom with the strong covalent bond. So in graphite, you can see it is 3 carbon atoms that are covalently attached. While in diamond, there are 4 carbon atoms that are covalently attached, right? So for the graphite, we need to choose 3, not 4. And for diamond, we need to choose 4. So B is the correct option, right? Okay, now question number 9. Which row describe the structure and the bonding in cobalt? What is cobalt? Of course, cobalt is a metal, right? So metal have giant metallic lattice, right? So they don't have simple structure. They have giant structure and they are not ionic. They are metallic instead. So you can see that the correct option is C here, right? Question number 10. The equation for the combustion of the ethanol is shown here. The relative molar mass MR of the ethanol is 46. Which statement about the reaction is correct? So we have to look these options one by one. 4.6 gram of the ethanol produces 4.4 gram of the carbon dioxide. So the MR of ethanol is 46, while the MR of carbon dioxide is 44, right? And you can see the ratio between them is 1:2. So it means if we need 46 gram of the ethanol, then carbon dioxide would be 88. If we make a ratio between them, then 4.6 will produce 8.8 gram of the carbon dioxide. So, of course, this is the wrong option. 92 gram of the ethanol produces 88 gram of the carbon dioxide. We just have compared that if we need 88 gram of the carbon dioxide, then the ethanol is 46. Just we have discussed because they have the ratio 1:2 between them. So this is again the wrong option. Okay, if we take 138, 138 is almost so let me calculate 138 divided by 46. It is okay, it has been multiplied with the 3. So if it multiply with the 3, then oxygen has 32 multiplied by 3. So if we have 46 grams of ethanol, then oxygen is 96, right? So if we multiply 46 with 3, then it make 138. That's why we have to multiply this 96 with 3 as well to make the same ratio. So it will not be 32. The answer would not be 32 at all. That's why it is the wrong option. Now look the option number D for the question number 10. 184 of the ethanol produces 216 of the water. So let's see what is the relationship. So C2H5OH is 1, then water is 3. This is 46, then this is 18 multiplied by 3, that is 54. So 184 divided by 46, that is multiplied by 4. So if we multiply it with the 4, then 54 would also be multiplied with the 4, and it is 216. So it is exactly according to the calculation. I hope you must have understood this. This is option D. Option D is the correct one, in which both the MRs have been multiplied with the same ratio, that is 4, right? Now let's move to the question number 11. A compound containing 40 gram of the carbon, 6.7 gram of the hydrogen, and 53.3 gram of the oxygen only. The relative mass of the compound is 60, which row describe the empirical formula and the molecular formula of the compound. So it's a lengthy calculation. Let's solve it. First of all, I'm going to calculate the empirical formula. So for empirical formula, we need carbon, we need hydrogen, and we need oxygen. Carbon is 40%, hydrogen is 6.7%, oxygen is 53.3%. So what is the first step? We have to divide them on their MR. So I will divide 40 by 12, 6.7 by 1, and 53.3 by 16. So let's see what are the answers. 40 divided by 12. So 40 divided by 12, it is 3.33. So this is 3.33. It would be 6.7, and 53.3. 53.3 multiplied by 16, it would be, sorry, we have to divide it. 53.3 divided by 16, it would be 3.3 as well. So it is 3.3 as well. Okay, so what I have to do, I have to make it a simple ratio. That's why I will multiply it with 3. That would be, if we multiply it with the 3, then what would be the options? Let's see. Okay, so after that, what we have to do, we have to divide them on the smallest number. This is the next step, 3.3. So 3.3, of course, is the smallest number. So I will divide all answer by this. This is 1, 6.7, 6.7 divided by 3.33, 3.33. So this is 2, this is 2, and this would be 1. So let me recap it again. What I have done, there were 3 elements in that compound. There were carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. We were provided with the percentage masses of all of them. So I just wrote them, and then I divided them by their molar masses. Okay. And then I got these answers. After that, we have to select the smallest answer, and we divide that smallest answer on all the answers. Now these are the whole number that I got. So the empirical formula is CH2O. This is the empirical formula. So if it is CH2O, it's mean option C and D are the wrong ones. So we have to choose between A and B. Now we have to calculate the empirical formula, sorry, molecular formula. So for molecular formula, we need, first of all, let me solve it here. We need empirical formula mass. So empirical formula mass would be carbon is 12, hydrogen is 2 here, and oxygen is 16, so it would be 30. Right? So it is 30. Then we have to find out N. What is N? N is molar mass of the compound divided by empirical formula mass. Molar mass of the compound is 60. Empirical formula mass we just have calculated is 30. So N would be 2. The last step is molecular formula is equal to N into empirical formula. So N is 2 and empirical formula is CH2O. So it would be C2H4O2. So it clearly shows that B is the correct option. By the way, I have recorded a detailed video of empirical formula and molecular formula in mole series. If you have any problem, you can go and watch that video. Okay, so now next question is question number 12. So for question number 12, hydrogen, oxygen, fuel cell are used in the electrical cars. 3 statements about these fuel cells are listed. So we have to choose the correct statement that will lead to the correct option. So the process is called electrolysis, not at all. Water is broken down into the cell to produce hydrogen, oxygen, and electricity. Not at all. Instead, hydrogen and oxygen combine to form the water. So it is wrong. Water is the only chemical product? Yes. The overall reaction for this is H2 plus O2 gives us 2H2O. Basically, hydrogen and oxygen combine and they will form the water. So water is the only product and also energy is released. So I believe that the only correct option is the option D here. Now question number 13. Okay, so for question number 13, a solution of copper sulfate can be electrolyzed using copper electrode or the carbon electrode. Okay, this is again the lengthy question. We have to do the electrolysis of the copper sulfate using copper electrode as well as using the carbon electrode. Okay, which statement are correct? So for that, of course, we have to look at the electrode products. So I'm gonna write it here. And I will use this space for this question. Okay, so I have aqueous copper sulfate. Aqueous copper sulfate means it has 2 positive ions and those are copper positive 2 and H positive 2, right? And it have 2 negative ions and those are SO4 minus 2 and OH minus 1, right? So what happens when we use carbon electrode? Carbon is the inert electrode, so it do not participate in the electrolysis and it do not affect the product of the electrolysis. So for that, what happen? For positive ions, we will choose the one that is at the bottom of the reactivity series, and that is copper positive 2. And as it is aqueous, so we will choose only OH negative ion. Remember, for aqueous or for dilute electrolyte, we choose only OH negative ion for the negative ion for the negative ions. Okay, while for the concentrated electrolyte, we never choose OH negative ions. Right? So what happens? Copper is positive, so it will move to the cathode. It will get reduced there. It will form copper positive. While for OH negative, it will move towards anode. It will oxidized there, and these are the product. Copper is blue in color, copper positive 2, while copper is metallic copper, that is pink in color. Okay. So when we will use the copper electrodes, so at anode, copper itself oxidizes to form the copper ions, while at cathode, copper positive 2 ions get reduced and they will form the copper. And always remember that copper positive 2 ions are blue and copper metal itself is pink or brown deposits. So now look at the options. Using copper electrode, oxygen gas form at the anode. Copper electrode. This is copper electrode. And at anode, copper is formed. So of course, this is incorrect. Using copper electrode, copper atom loses electron at anode. Okay, so this is anode, copper electrode, this is anode, and copper is losing electrons. So this is the correct statement. Yes. Using carbon electrode, copper metal form at the cathode. So this is carbon electrode, this is cathode, copper metal is being formed. So again, this is the correct statement. Using carbon electrode, copper ions gains electron at the cathode. So you can see this is carbon electrode, and in cathode, copper is gaining electron. So again, this is the correct statement. That's why statement 2, 3 and 4 are the correct one, and it makes option C is the correct one. Again, a lengthy question. Question number 14. The equation for the formation or combustion of the hydrazine is shown. What is the overall enthalpy change for the combustion of the 1 mole of the hydrazine? So what we have to do? Basically, we have to calculate energy of the reactant, then we have to calculate the energy of all the products. So let's calculate it. Energy of reactants. Okay, so you can see one NH bond, second NH bond, third NH bond, and 4 NH bond. So here are 4 NH bond, and there is one N triple bond N, double bond, sorry. So N double bond N is only one here, and there is one O double bond O bond. So one O double bond O bond. Let's calculate. The energy for NH bond is 391. The energy for N double bond is 409, and for oxygen it is 496. Let's calculate it. 391 multiplied by 4. So 391 multiplied by 4, it is 1564. So 1564 plus 409 plus 496. So plus 409 plus 496. So this is 2469. 2469. Let me 2469. Yes. Okay. So now calculate energy of products. We have one N triple bond N. So one triple bond N bond, and we have This is one OH bond, this is another OH bond, and it is multiplying with the 2 as well. So overall, there are 4 OH bonds, right? The energy for the N triple bond N is 944, and for OH bond it is 463. So 944 will be as such, 463 multiplied by 4. 463 multiplied by 4. This is 1852. 1852. Now I have to add 944 into it. So 944 plus 1852, that is 1852. So this is 2796. 2796. Now coming towards the final step, that is delta H is equal to delta H of the reactant minus delta H of the product. Delta H of the reactant is 2469 and delta H of the product is 2796. 2469. So I will write 2469 minus 2796. 2796. This is minus 327. So the correct option is, after a very long calculation, is minus 327. Okay, so now move towards the question number 15. It says dissolving ammonium chloride in the water is an endothermic change. Which row shows the energy changes and the temperature changes of the mixture, energy changes and the temperature changes of the mixture during the dissolving of the endothermic reaction. Okay, so let's suppose that you have the beaker full of water, for example. So let me show water with the blue color like this. Okay, so let me show ammonium chloride with the pink color or even green color, so it is prominent to you. Okay, this is ammonium chloride and this is water. This is an endothermic process. The dissolution of the ammonium chloride is an endothermic process. It means it will absorb heat. From where it will absorb heat? Surrounding. And what are the surrounding in this whole scenario? Water is the surrounding here. So the heat from the water will be moved towards the ammonium chloride. So the temperature of the water would decrease. Temperature would decrease for the water. That's why we have to choose the option which says temperature is decreased. Note the option which says that temperature is increased. And as it is an endothermic process, so for the endothermic process, energy is absorbed, not released. So we have to choose the option which says that energy is absorbed. So clearly, I hope from this discussion you must understood that the correct option is the option A. Now move towards the question number 16. The aqueous sodium thiosulfate reacted with dilute hydrochloric acid to form the yellow precipitate of the sulfur. The precipitate form more quickly when the reactant are heated. Which statement explains this observation? Obviously, this question is about the rate of the reaction. And the rate of reaction is directly proportional to the temperature. Why is this so? Because when we increase the temperature, the kinetic energy of the particle also increased. And when the kinetic energy of the particle is increased, then they move more frequently. Okay, and when they move more frequently, then there are more collision between them. The activation energy of the particle is not lower. It is only lower in the case of catalyst. When we use the catalyst, then the activation energy is lowered. So clearly the statement 1 and 2 are the correct one, and it makes option A is the correct one. Okay, now next question is question number 17. So for question number 17, this question is about the conditions used in the Haber process and in the contact process. So before looking at the option, just see what are the conditions used for Haber process and for contact process. So the first condition is temperature, the other is catalyst, and the third is pressure. So the temperature used for Haber process is almost 450 degrees Celsius. The same temperature is used for contact process as well. Okay, so this is same for both of them. The catalyst for Haber process is iron, while for contact process it is vanadium pentoxide. And for temperature it is 200 atm for Haber, while 2 atm only for contact. So now look at the options. The typical pressure used in the Haber process is similar to the contact process. Not at all. You can see that the temperature pressure is different. The typical temperature used in the Haber process is similar to the contact process. Yes, you can see here both have the 450 degrees Celsius temperature here. So this seems to be the correct option. But look at the other two options as well. The Haber process used vanadium pentoxide. No, it used iron. So this is wrong. Both processes produce the acidic gases. Not at all. Haber process produce ammonia, that is an alkaline gas. Okay, so option B is the correct one. Now move towards question number C. The equation shows the equilibrium between the dinitrogen trioxide. We have to look at the equilibrium question. Okay. So the forward reaction is endothermic, which statement is not correct. So look at the option. At equilibrium, the concentration of the reactant and the product stays constant. So this is the correct statement. But we have to choose the statement that is incorrect. But this statement is correct. So this is not our option clearly. At equilibrium, the rate of the forward reaction is equal to the rate of the reverse reaction. Again, this statement is correct. When the pressure is increased, a dark brown color is seen. What happens when the pressure is increased? When the pressure is increased, the equilibrium moves to that side of the equation of the reaction with the less number of mole of the gas. And here are 2 number of the mole of the gas here and 1 number of the mole of the gas here. So when the pressure is increased, it should move towards the lesser number of moles. Lesser number of moles are in the reactant. So a colorless solution should obtain. While he is saying that a darker blue solution is obtained, that is a wrong statement. And of course, this is our correct statement because we have to choose the incorrect statement. When the temperature is increased, a darker brown solution is seen. Clearly, this is an endothermic process. For endothermic process, if we increases the temperature, the reaction moves toward the forward direction. And if it will move toward the forward direction, NO2 will be formed, that is brown in color. So this is again the correct statement. So from this discussion, you easily understood that option C is the correct one. What is the oxidation number of the chromium in Cr2O7 minus 2? So let's calculate it. Cr2O7 overall it is minus 2. What is the oxidation number of the oxygen? We all know this is -2. And there are 7 oxygen here. So 7 multiplied by 2, it would be -14, right? We need -2 overall. So it should have +12. So -14 plus 12, it makes -2. So Cr2 has +12. But for one chromium, what we have to do, +12 divided by 2, it will make +6. So clearly the correct option is option C, right? Okay, now look at the last question for this part of the paper. That is question number 20. Which method is used to prepare a pure dry sample of lead chloride? My dear students, you know that lead chloride is an insoluble salt. So we have to choose all the options correct carefully that are involved in the formation of insoluble salt. Crystallize. We will not choose any of the option which says crystallize, because crystallization is only for the soluble salt. Okay, mix lead hydroxide and aqueous sodium chloride. Lead hydroxide and aqueous sodium hydroxide. So lead is less reactive, so it cannot displace sodium. Filter, wash and dry the residue. No, this is incorrect. So clearly option B is the correct one. We have to mix lead nitrate and hydrochloric acid, then we'll filter. It will form lead chloride and HNO3. Dry the crystal. Yes. So B is the correct option for that. So in the next video, inshallah, we will do the last 20 question of this paper. Thank you so much for watching. Allah Hafiz.